How do you create a cohesive brand?
It's very difficult to predict where the brand will go. It will follow the company, right? So this is not a company led by a brand. It's a brand led by a company. You don't try to adapt to existing models. You create new ones, create our own voice, and we keep creating at scale. A lot of people, again, tend to think brands in isolation in terms of visual. Is not. Visual is just a small part of what a brand is. Your tone of voice, what you say, which is an expression of how you think, is actually the most important thing. The most important advice I could give is not to be a conformist and to think really, to dream big, to push it as far as you can.
Welcome to G42 On Air, your front row access to the AI breakthroughs and visionaries transforming our world. From the heart of the UAE, here in Abu Dhabi, G42 is a global pioneer in AI and cloud technologies, tackling society's biggest challenges, from healthcare and energy to climate and the frontiers of space. So how do we turn AI's potential into practice and purpose? Join me, Amandeep, for this special podcast series exploring groundbreaking innovations, why they matter, the responsibilities involved, and if these solutions can be scaled worldwide to maximize impact for all. In today's episode, we put the spotlight on G42 and look at how the brand is evolving to reflect the company's global vision. And to take us through this, we have in the studio Alex Brunori, VP of Brand at G42. So Alex, let's begin with your G42 journey. When did it begin?
It began less than 2 years ago. Feels already 20, but it was less than 2 years ago, actually.
And what brings you into the world of brand?
Oh, well, that's my absolute passion. I mean, I've been doing branding since I started in the creative industry as an ECD, and then I moved to Google in the region, actually, for 9 years as a head of creative, and then G42. And for me, it's a natural progression because I've always been after brand that push the envelope and, set new standards.
And talking about setting new standards, G42, of course, is setting new standards across the board, a huge infrastructure ecosystem. And we talk about the AI world, lots of different sectors. How do you create a cohesive brand for a company with such a huge reach, not only in the region, but now internationally?
That's fascinating, right? Because I think as a marketeer and a brand enthusiast, this is the ultimate challenge because you have almost a shape-shifting brand that keeps growing, expanding, and reaches out to the rest of the world. So how do you make that brand a brand? And that was, I think, what motivated me the most in starting this journey towards our new identity and the way we show up to the world. And basically, you have to not go for something that is cliche, because the risk with this kind of brands is that you go flat. You try to please everyone and to say a bit of everything. But the other way to approach this, which is what we chose, is to create a new kind of brand in terms of branding, which is, we called it an intelligent brand that is able to grow with the company. So not trying to cage the company in an identity, but doing the other way around, making the identity so flexible and so adaptable and so intelligent that can keep growing with the brand without having to abide the identity.
And I feel that really reflects the philosophy of G42 itself as well. It doesn't want to be contained within a box. It wants to be able to be malleable and adaptive and also transforming over time, evolving over time. So
100%. It's not about, it's a bit of a cliche, think out of the box. For us, there are no boxes for us. That's the point, is we don't see the world in boxes, neither the brand should, and we decided to go for a different approach exactly for this reason. You don't try to adapt to existing models, you create new ones.
So tell us about the intelligent brand.
Yeah, it's a brand that, first of all, we are an AI company, right? AI is at the core of everything we do. So the first thing was, how do we make this an AI brand? And that's where all the thinking behind using artificial intelligence within the identity comes up, right? Brand prompting is something that I think we're gonna hear in the future more and more of. So how do you create an identity that you can prompt, and an identity which is so intelligent that understands what you're prompting it for and gives you back what you need?
So, what do you mean by that in practical terms?
Yeah, in practical terms, that's so fascinating. So, for example, all the visuals that you see around the brand, they're all prompted, and they have been studied to be prompted. So there is prompt engineering behind a lot of these visuals that is set, and exactly like in the old days, you would set the brand color or the brand font. You do set the brand prompts. That's what brand prompting is. And every time we build a new bit, it comes out of that thinking. So we don't have any constriction in terms of production times and visuals, and we don't have to go either bespoke with photographers, or stock, which is low level cliche. We create our own voice, and we keep creating at scale.
And the most recent creation, you launched at a really big event for G42.
Oh, the Supercharged event. That's where we decided to reveal the new brand. And again, that is a bit, you don't launch a brand. That's a top-down thing looking externally. You make everyone live the brand, right? And only when the brand is felt by everyone, it becomes a brand. Otherwise, it's just wishful thinking or something that the company would love. So we don't launch a brand. We just create an event like Supercharged, which is our annual company event, and we immerse people in the new brand. And the reaction has been phenomenal, because then you really understand what your brand is when you live it. And there is nothing more experiential than this kind of event that lasts all day. Every single touch point is an expression of the brand.
I was able to attend the event itself, so I can certainly vouch for it being a very experiential experience and visceral, in fact. For our audience who are trying to imagine it right now, take them to that moment at Supercharge when you unveiled it and what the reaction was.
Yeah, look, I think definitely the preparation for the event, so people getting into the space and starting to see something that they've never seen before in terms of visuals, colors, the way we talk, right, which is very important. But this is nothing compared to what they experienced when we actually started the event. So those introductory video that was playing full blast sound, visuals, it really brought the brand at a visceral level. As you said, people felt the brand at the body level because of the sound, because of the colors, because of the huge screens. So it was really a primer for the brand that you couldn't ask for anything better.
And those real kind of human senses, you really had a kind of touch point on all of them. What was your personal experience of seeing it for the first time in the flesh, in the real life?
You know, this brand was already in my mind. You feel the brand, you envision the brand
You
long
dream the
before.
brand.
Also, dreaming is a big part of it, right? You're absolutely right.
Yes.
So dreaming is a subconscious function. So this is where creativity really happens. It happens at a subconscious level, not at a rational level. So you dream a brand if you want, and you've seen it in your head so many times, and you see it coming to life every single day through experiments. And of course, we have worked with best-in-class branding agency. I'm lucky to have an amazingly talented team to bring this to life. So it's not me, I'm just a sort of conductor, but there is a huge, passionate team behind this exercise.
I think that's a really interesting metaphor to use as a conductor, and having all these different actual kind of points that you can draw on, this orchestra of talents and inspiration that you can draw on as the conductor. When it comes to looking to the future, you want to, as you said, create a brand which can be adapted, can evolve. Where do you see G42 and the brand experience going?
Well, we are at an inflection point, right? So I don't see any incremental change. I can only think in terms of exponential changes. So it's very difficult to predict where the brand will go. It will follow the company, right? So this is not a company led by a brand. It's a brand led by a company, because what we are doing in terms of what we do is so deeply impacting everything and everyone around us, that we as marketeers can only try to create a brand that reflects the changes as faithfully as possible, given the speed of the company. So I know that we are in for the big game. We want to create a global impact. We want to make our everyday better. And when you have this kind of vision as a company, you don't compromise. You just do your best. You show up every day, making your absolute best to create that impact.
And because we have quite a diverse audience tuning in to the G42 on-air podcast, people who are deep into the technology, perhaps quite new to marketing, to branding, brand prompting, what would be some of the kind of key takeaways that you might want to share with them when they might want to think about how do they become inspired to think of a brand for their new company or a new launch, etc.? Where would you say they should start?
Um, Start from ambition, right? A lot of people, they are very afraid of making anything new. They try to follow a beaten path. They try to say it has always been done like that. That's a recipe for conforming. So the most important advice I could give is not to be a conformist, and to think really, to dream big, to push it as far as you can. And then always remember, a brand is not the color, is not the typeface, it's really how that brand makes you feel and makes you think. This is what a brand is. At the end of the day, there is nothing that you can do in the visual space that creates awareness of who you are.
And if we did have to think in terms of very linear terms, what the brand is in terms of colors and a typeface, how would you describe it? If I forced you to think in those very restrictive terms.
Yeah. Look, I would say colors are vibration, energy. So it's about creating a color palette that reflects the vibrancy of AI and that multifaceted approach of AI, because you can apply AI to everything. At the same time, you don't want a brand to be like a set of infinite colors. So how do you identify those colors and those frequencies that can actually express the full spectrum without expressing the full spectrum? And in terms of typeface, you need something that can survive the test of time. So not too classical, because that would be, again, overseen, not smoke and mirrors that never survives more than a year. So it's a science. You have to find a font that is really promising in terms of longevity and apply your touch to it. Our font is bespoke, is custom, is based on an existing font, but then has been modified to reflect our brand. It's inspired by the lines and angles of the G42 logo. So it has that particular vibe that you, even if you don't see that it has the same angles of parts of the logo, you feel it, and that's enough.
And colors, how would you describe the colors?
Well, we go for what we call silicon black, which is a very deep, dark, almost tactile black, green, black, black, green, and warm white, because for us, human touch is so important. So we are not into any super tech color palette. Both colors are an expression of light and darkness, shadows and light, at a human level. So they're not extremes. We are not. Our eyes are not. Don't live and think in terms of extremes, right? We like nuances. So both those black and white are human. Very, very.
And green?
Green is our almost our signature color. Also, when you think a brand, you don't forget or ignore the past. The brand is an evolution. So it's never a clear cut and completely different. And that specific hue of green, light green, comes from our past. Is really the last incarnation of the brand. Invested a lot in that specific green. But again, these are just colors. They wouldn't mean much in terms of branding. You don't think of Apple or Nike in terms of colors. You think in terms of what they mean for you. This is what we aim for.
Intriguing. And I'm fascinated by your perspective and your creative, abstract, but making it into the real world way of thinking. It's a pleasure, like delving deep into your creative mind and hearing more. What do you see as the future for G42 when it comes to conveying those kind of really deep key messages and key work that G42 are doing across the ecosystem through the visuals, through the way that you make people feel when they come in contact with the brand? What's your kind of vision going forward?
That's very interesting. So this is about what you say. A lot of people, again, tend to think brands in isolation in terms of visual. Is not. Visual is just a small part of what a brand is. Your tone of voice, what you say, which is an expression of how you think, is actually the most important thing. Even as a person, you can have a superficial impression of someone by the visual, but it's only when you talk to someone at a deep level that you understand everything about that person, right? It's very revealing. For a brand is no different. Is the tone of voice is what you say. What you say is an expression of how you think. So we think in terms of impact. That's why we have developed what we called internally an impact algorithm, which is basically, since what we do is extremely complex, an impact algorithm is these two key blocks of meanings that go from what we do technically and show the impact we have in human terms. Is the marriage of tech and human to show what is the impact, because we think in terms of impact. So if you express yourself in terms of impact in a way that everyone can understand, all the efforts we are doing in simplifying what we do is not banking on jargon or banking on industry talk, is really literally saying, this is the technology, but it's not important. This is how we get to do what we do. What is really important is the impact that we have. And this is what you need to feel and understand from the brand point of view.
And I completely agree with you 100%. It is in the meeting of people that you get to learn about them. We've just had such a pleasure learning about your personal journey, your inspiration behind what you do as a profession, but also how you're really passionate about sharing that message of what G42 are achieving, the impact they're achieving through the brand, through the storytelling. It's so vital. Alex, thank you so much for your time today. And we look forward to seeing how the brand evolves and hope that you keep us up to speed with that and return here at the G42 On Air podcast.
With pleasure. Thanks a lot, Amandeep.
And thank you for joining us. Please rate and review us on Apple Podcasts and Spotify. And see you for the next episode of G42 On Air.